Welcome back to the Qt Developer. Now today, we're going to take a look at our QThread, and we're going to make the connection between the QThread and our core class. So where we left off before, we actually made the core class. Now I need to be able to communicate with that core class. And I'm going to do that with a QThread, which is what we created 2 episodes ago. So what I want to do is I want to create an instance of the core. I'll set my states, temp state. I'll have a symbol, time frame, and my current account. And I also want to have a pointer to the main window. And the reason why I'm going to do this is because I'll use the signal and slot mechanism for certain things. However, I want to be able to use my main window to be able to pass the data back and forth. It just makes it easier for me to debug. Otherwise, the data gets passed around between the signals, and I find it challenging to debug it when there's a problem. And there's always a problem. And we created this singleton prior. So now I'm going to go ahead and start adding some of these new methods. So the first method I want to do is I'd like to go ahead and add a main window. So I'm going to say void add main window. And that is going to take a pointer to the main window. So main window, and I'll call it root window. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to actually be able to get the instance of the main window. So then I'll have main window, and I'll have a pointer back to get main window, and I won't have anything inside. No parameters. Then I actually need a method to run it, like I need a loop. The loop's got to run to get all my messages and to process the information. So I'll just call this run. And that too will not take any parameters. Then I want to check to see if it's actually connected. So I'll return a Boolean value is connected. And this too will not have any parameters. Then I want to actually start the connection. And this would be a void. It won't return anything. And I'll call it start connection to IB. And that's going to take a constant character. Whoops. And that'll be the host. I will also have a port, which will be an integer. And I'll have an integer for the client ID. The next one I want to check is disconnect. Well, not check, but it'd be able to disconnect. So that will return nothing. Whoops. Disconnect from IB. And that too will not have any parameters. So there we go. This will all be my connections. So let's go ahead and say, make a note. And I'll say connections and main window. Then I'll go ahead and begin to, whoops, add these definitions. There. And I'll have to do them in that order. So the next thing I need to do is I need something to actually deal with the market data. So I'll make my notes first. Market data. And here I want to be able to init the historical data. And this is going to take a constant unsigned integer, and I'll call it UID. I then want to take a constant string and I want to pass it as symbol. And then the last thing I want to do is I want to actually pass a time frame and the number of days. So let's say, go ahead and do this. So I'll pass constant string time frame and a constant string of the number of days. There. Okay. Now, that'll take care of initializing the data. Once the data is initialized, I want all that to be stored in a vector. So let me create a Q vector of candlesticks. And actually it's going to return a Q vector for candlesticks because I want to get the candle data. Okay. And that won't have any parameters. Then I need to be able to request the price. And that requires a long for the ID and the symbol. And the symbol will be a constant string and then I want a way to actually cancel the data. So cancel the market data and I want to pass it the ID. Okay, terrific. So now we'll go ahead and add these definitions. Okay. So now for the main window. So let's see. So for the main window, remember I need to be able to communicate with the core. So here, when I define my core, it's IB. Remember, here's my core right here. And I'm going to go ahead and start calling some of these methods. So here's IB. So inside of my main window, I want to say IB dot add main window, and I'll add the root window. So now I'm able to pass that directly to that core. Then I want to set the root window here to the root window. So now I have a reference to it both in the thread, and I passed it to the core. So now I need to be able to get the main window. And so I want to return nm underscore root window. Now this next one's going to be a little tricky, because I'm going to make a while loop and I want to check when IB is connected. So while IB is connected, I want to actually I want to process the messages. And I'm going to pass, remember that temp state we were looking at earlier? Well, that's what I want to pass through. And between each of these, I'm going to call the QThread and I'm going to sleep it in milliseconds by 100. So that'll slow it down a little bit. I found 100 to be a decent delay. Now the next thing I need to do is I need to actually return whether or not it's connected. And so I will return IB dot is connected. So you see, I'm just calling these. See, if I go take a look in here, you see that? I'm just checking to see if they're actually connected. And then this is the core, and the core will communicate directly with the MP client, which is here, which is inside of eClient. So I'm just kind of passing the buck. So now I need to actually start the connection. So to do that, I want to say IB dot connect, and I want to pass it host, port, and the client ID. And now for disconnect, I want to basically say IB.disconnect. And again, if you take a look, you see it comes into the core, disconnect, and then it immediately calls that client and calls disconnect, which is a member of the eClient socket. Now I want to implement the init historical data, which is just another call. So IB.init historical data, and I want to pass it the UID, the symbol, the time frame, and the days. And again, let's go take a look. You see, here it is in my core. And so all I'm doing here is I go ahead and I begin to build it. Remember? So we get the time, build the time, then I create the contract, and I build the contract based on the symbol that I'm passing. In this case, it's going to be a stock. Currency will be USD. The exchange will be smart. I could create another parameter in which I pass the specific exchange that I would like to choose. But just to be simple, I use the smart, which will automatically choose for me. And this is quite handy if we want to specify or target specific exchanges. But for now, I'll keep it less complicated. And then I wrap them all up, and then I go ahead and pass it. Remember this tag value list pointer, that's important. So if we come take a look at this within that eClient, you see, this is what it's looking for right here. It's looking for a pointer to this list right here. And this is actually a shared pointer. Okay, so it then wraps everything up within the client, kind of moves forward. But we don't have to worry about that. That's already done for us. So now I want to get the actual candle data. Which I haven't implemented yet. So I'll have to go ahead and implement that. Didn't do it. Thought I did. Well, I'll have to do that. So for now, that'll be blank. But what I can do is let me double check the request price. Do I have this? Yes, I do. Okay, so now for the request price, I now want to say, okay, IB.requestPrice. And I'm going to pass it the ID and the symbol. Now, there may be a question here. Why am I passing it an ID? Well, the answer to that is, let's go take a look at request prices. So when the prices are requested, it does require an ID, which will be here for the market data, and it requires a contract. Now the ID is useful because what if you have multiple windows? That's really what the ID is for. So I can request multiple symbols and then assign that data to multiple windows or multiple views. All right, say you have a tab view with 4 different symbols and you want to watch them all. Well, this is how you do it. Those IDs, which are passed to the market data, that's how you track all the information. And what needs to be passed is a type long, because quite a few can be passed. So that's why I have that long ID in there. And then when I want to cancel the market data, I'm going to say ib.cancel market data, and then I pass it the ID. And so this is how we actually connect. Well, I connect the QThread to that core, which processes the messages. And then I can go ahead and run this thread, and this will be responsible specifically for the market data and anything that's coming in. So all the data that comes in, everything we see on the chart, the movement of the prices and how we monitor those prices, the historical data, everything else will come through this thread. Eventually, I'll actually create a second thread for outgoing information. So for now, this processes everything on the chart. So stay tuned. I hope you liked this episode. Please write some comments, share your thoughts. I'll see you soon. Happy coding.